Emily, still absorbing their words, felt a sense of peace wash over her. "It's all right," she said, her voice reassuring. "We can't always control how people act, but we can choose how we respond. That's all that matters." Just as the conversation began to settle, the woman who had spoken earlier, a kind-hearted face marked by a soft expression, stepped forward. "Listen, I know this is a little forward, but if you don't mind, I was just about to head out. I'd be happy to give you a ride. It's no trouble at all. You don't have to wait for the bus." Emily's face lit up with surprise, her brow furrowing for just a moment. "Oh, that's really kind of you, but I wouldn't want to trouble you." The woman smiled warmly. "It's no trouble at all. I'll take you wherever you need to go, and maybe we can even talk more. I know how hard it can be to navigate the world sometimes, especially with people like that guy making it harder than it should be." Emily glanced at the bus stop and then back at the woman, her hesitation melting away as she saw the sincerity in her eyes. "Thank you," Emily said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "I'd really appreciate that." As the two women headed toward the car, the bystanders continued to stand there, some still deep in thought, while others exchanged quiet words. The ripple effect of Keanu's simple act of kindness had touched more than just Emily. It had awakened a sense of responsibility in those who had witnessed it. And though the moment might seem small, the shift in the crowd's energy was undeniable. Perhaps, just perhaps, they'd all remember what Keanu had shown them. Sometimes, the right thing to do is just to step in. And that one act of courage can inspire others to follow suit. As the woman drove Emily away, the people at the bus stop couldn't help but reflect on the lesson they'd just learned. The day had started like any other, but it had ended with a powerful reminder that kindness, even in the face of adversity, can change the course of a moment and maybe even a life. As the woman drove away with Emily, Keanu stood by the bus stop for a moment longer, watching the scene unfold. He made no show of his next move, slipping his hands into his pockets and turning to walk away. But before he could make it too far, he noticed a figure approaching him from the corner of his eye. It was the same woman who had offered Emily a ride. She stopped in front of him, a slight blush coloring her cheeks as she caught her breath. "Hey, I just wanted to say thank you again," she said, her voice soft but sincere. Well, it was something I won't forget." Keanu gave her a small, knowing smile. "You don't have to thank me. Just doing what any of us should do." The woman nodded, but before she turned to leave, she hesitated. "You know, I don't think people like you get enough credit. Not just in movies, but in moments like this. You made a difference today, and it's something I think everyone here will remember." Emily stood firm, refusing to show how deeply his words cut. Her heart raced, but she knew better than to react. Still, a small part of her wished just this once that someone, anyone, would step up and say something. Little did she know, someone was already watching closely, his jaw clenched in quiet anger, ready to do exactly that. A few steps away, leaning casually against a metal post, stood a man dressed in a black hoodie, faded jeans and well-worn boots, with his hands tucked into his pockets and dark sunglasses shielding his eyes. Keanu Reeves blended seamlessly into the morning crowd. Most commuters had no idea who he was, or if they did, they were too preoccupied to notice. Keanu liked it that way. Public moments like these were his sanctuary from the relentless glare of fame. But today wasn't shaping up to be just another quiet morning. The rude man's voice grated in the air, each cruel remark tightening a knot in Keanu's chest. His normally relaxed demeanor shifted as his jaw clenched and a flicker of irritation crossed his face. He wasn't one to jump into confrontations needlessly, but something about this scene gnawed at him. He watched Emily stand there, steady despite the verbal assault. Her composure was admirable, but it was clear she was enduring more than she should have to. The stranger, emboldened by the crowd's indifference, took another mocking step closer. "You deaf too, lady?" The man jeered. "Ain't got nothing to say, huh?" Keanu's lips pressed into a thin line. He straightened from the post, exuding quiet resolve as he took a deliberate step toward the scene. His voice, low but firm, carried the weight of authority without needing to be raised. "Hey," Keanu said calmly, cutting through the man's tirade like a blade. "That's enough." The air around the bus stop seemed to shift. Conversations halted, heads turned, and the rude man blinked in surprise, momentarily thrown off by the unexpected interruption. Keanu's expression was calm but unyielding, his tone leaving no room for argument. He stood there, a quiet force ready to defend a woman who hadn't asked for help but clearly deserved it. Keanu stepped closer, his voice steady but commanding. "Hey," he repeated firmly, locking eyes with the stranger. "That's enough." The man's sneer faltered for a split second, but he quickly regained his bravado, puffing out his chest in defiance. "Mind your business, pal," he spat, trying to maintain the upper hand. "I'm just having a conversation. Ain't illegal to talk, is it?" Keanu didn't flinch. "It's not," he agreed evenly, "but harassing someone, that's a whole different story." The stranger narrowed his eyes, clearly irritated by Keanu's calm demeanor. "Who do you think you are? Some kind of hero?" he scoffed, stepping back slightly, but still trying to save face. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "I'm just someone telling you to back off," he said with quiet authority. A flicker of recognition finally dawned in the man's eyes as he took a closer look. The casual clothes had masked Keanu's identity at first, but now it was unmistakable. His face paled slightly, his bravado quickly crumbling under the weight of realization. "You wait. Are you?" the man stammered, suddenly unsure of himself. Keanu remained composed, not offering confirmation or denial. The subtle, powerful presence he exuded spoke volumes on its own. The stranger glanced nervously around at the onlookers, who were now fully tuned into the scene. Mutterings spread through the small crowd, as people recognized the actor standing in quiet defiance. Embarrassed and rattled, the man took a step back. "Whatever," he muttered under his breath. "This place is full of crazies." Without another word, he turned sharply on his heel and stalked away, shoulders hunched in defeat. The tension hanging over the bus stop dissipated with his retreat. Keanu remained standing for a beat longer, ensuring the man was truly gone before turning his attention back to Emily. As the stranger disappeared into the distance, Keanu took a breath, the tension easing from his shoulders. He turned toward Emily, who still stood composed, her cane tapping lightly against the pavement as if trying to make sense of the sudden shift in the atmosphere. "Hey," Keanu said gently, his voice softer now. "Are you okay?" Emily smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach her lips. "I'm fine. It's not the first time someone's had something nasty to say," she admitted. "But thank you. That was kind of you. You didn't deserve that," he said simply. "No one does." There was a brief pause before Keanu added, "Mind if I walk you to that bench over there?" Emily hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Sure, I'd appreciate that." Keanu offered his arm and Emily accepted with grace. Together, they made their way toward a shaded bench near a small patch of greenery. The noise of the city faded slightly as they sat down, the world momentarily quieter. "You handle yourself pretty well," Keanu said with a light chuckle. "Better than most would." Emily laughed softly. "You learn to brush things off when you have to," she said. "But not everyone steps in like you did. Most people just pretend they don't see anything." Keanu's brow furrowed thoughtfully. People get caught up in their own lives, he said. But it doesn't mean they don't care. Sometimes they just don't know how to act. Emily nodded, appreciating the perspective. After a moment of silence, she added, I wasn't just waiting for the bus to get around today, you know. I was heading to the music store. I've been saving up for a new keyboard. You're a musician? Keanu asked, genuinely intrigued. Well, Emily said with a sheepish smile, I'm trying to be. I've always loved music, it's been my escape. I want to compose my own songs one day. Maybe even perform. But sometimes, I wonder if it's too much of a long shot. Keanu leaned forward, his expression earnest. It's not a long shot if it's what you love, he said. Music's always been important to me too. I've even played in a band, though I'm better at pretending to be a musician in movies than actually being one. Emily grinned. Seriously? You seem like you could handle it. He chuckled. I try. Their conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter, shared stories and dreams. Keanu offered encouragement, assuring Emily that her blindness was not a barrier to success, but a part of her unique story as an artist. You've got something special, Keanu said with quiet conviction. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. As the bus pulled up to the stop once more, Keanu stood and offered his hand. You got this, he said warmly. And if you ever need someone to cheer at your first big show, I'm in. Emily's face lit up, a newfound confidence shining through. I'll hold you to that, she said, stepping onto the bus with a smile. As Keanu watched the bus disappear down the street, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could make the biggest difference, and today has been one of those days. As the bus rolled away, the quiet hum of the city began to swell once more. The calm, peaceful moment between Emily and Keanu hadn't gone unnoticed by the small group of bystanders who had been quietly observing the encounter. As Keanu began to walk away, the crowd around the bus stop shifted, murmuring to one another. Some were still processing what had just happened, while others were beginning to realize who Keanu was. A woman in her 30s, her face lighting up with recognition, approached Emily cautiously. Excuse me, she said, her voice a bit shaky with a mix of awe and guilt. I have to say I feel terrible for not stepping in sooner. I should have said something when that guy was harassing you. Emily looked up, a warm smile spreading across her face. It's okay, she replied gently. I've had worse. But thank you for saying that. The woman hesitated, glancing at Keanu's retreating form, and then back at Emily. I can't believe he just stepped in like that. I mean, I recognized him, but honestly it felt like, I don't know, like he was just another person doing what was right. Like it should have been all of us. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath. I know what you mean. It can feel like people don't care until something drastic happens. But sometimes it only takes one person. A man who had been standing nearby added, his voice tinged with remorse. I was just about to step in, but I didn't know what to do. I feel ashamed now. I think we all feel the same, the woman said. It's easy to be a bystander when you don't know what to do or when you're worried about causing a scene. But Keanu, he didn't think twice. The man nodded, his face reddening. It's like he showed us all what we should have been doing. Emily, still absorbing their words, felt a sense of peace wash over her. It's all right, she said, her voice reassuring. We can't always control how people act, but we can choose how we respond. That's all that matters. Just as the conversation began to settle, the woman who had spoken earlier, a kind-hearted face marked by a soft expression, stepped forward. Listen, I know this is a little forward, but if you don't mind, I was just about to head out. I'd be happy to give you a ride. It's no trouble at all. You don't have to wait for the bus. Emily's face lit up with surprise, her brow furrowing for just a moment. Oh, that's really kind of you. But I wouldn't want to trouble you. The woman smiled warmly. It's no trouble at all. I'll take you wherever you need to go, and maybe we can even talk more. I know how hard it can be to navigate the world sometimes, especially with people like that guy making it harder than it should be. Emily glanced at the bus stop and then back at the woman, her hesitation melting away as she saw the sincerity in her eyes. Thank you, Emily said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. I'd really appreciate that. As the two women headed toward the car, the bystanders continued to stand there, some still deep in thought, while others exchanged quiet words. The ripple effect of Keanu's simple act of kindness had touched more than just Emily. It had awakened a sense of responsibility in those who had witnessed it. And though the moment might seem small, the shift in the crowd's energy was undeniable. Perhaps, just perhaps, they'd all remember what Keanu had shown them. Sometimes, the right thing to do is just to step in. And that one act of courage can inspire others to follow suit. As the woman drove Emily away, the people at the bus stop couldn't help but reflect on the lesson they'd just learned. The day had started like any other, but it had ended with a powerful reminder that kindness, even in the face of adversity, can change the course of a moment and maybe even a life. As the woman drove away with Emily, Keanu stood by the bus stop for a moment longer, watching the scene unfold. He made no show of his next move, slipping his hands into his pockets and turning to walk away. But before he could make it too far, he noticed a figure approaching him from the corner of his eye. It was the same woman who had offered Emily a ride. She stopped in front of him, a slight blush coloring her cheeks as she caught her breath. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you again, she said, her voice soft but sincere. Well, it was something I won't forget. Keanu gave her a small, knowing smile. You don't have to thank me. Just doing what any of us should do. The woman nodded, but before she turned to leave, she hesitated. You know, I don't think people like you get enough credit. Not just in movies, but in moments like this. You made a difference today, and it's something I think everyone here will remember. Keanu looked at her, his expression thoughtful. Thanks, he said simply, giving a small nod as he turned to leave. But as he passed the corner of the street, he stopped in his tracks, noticing the woman and Emily now stepping out of the car. Emily was holding a small piece of paper, staring at it in disbelief. Keanu had taken the opportunity to discreetly cover the fare for Emily's ride, leaving behind not only the money, but a note with his contact information. A personal touch, something he did without drawing attention to himself, like so many other gestures he'd made throughout his life. As Emily read the note, her eyes widened in shock. Is this? She whispered to the woman beside her. This is his contact information. He gave me his number and this is for a music foundation. The woman smiled warmly, her eyes glistening. I think he wants to help you, Emily. Maybe more than you know. Emily, overwhelmed with emotion, pressed her hand to her chest as tears filled her eyes. I don't even know what to say. I never expected any of this. Her voice faltered, and the woman placed a reassuring hand on her arm. You don't have to say anything. Just know that there are people who believe in you. And it's clear that Keanu is one of them. As the two women exchanged words of encouragement, Keanu continued walking, slipping away into the crowd. But his footsteps slowed when he heard a whisper behind him. He's a real hero, not just in movies. Keanu paused for a second, his heart warmed by the quiet words. He didn't turn around, nor did he need to. He knew he'd made a difference today, not by playing a part or performing for the camera, but simply by being a decent human being when it mattered. As he disappeared around the corner, a small smile tugged at his lips. For a brief moment, he felt like the world was a little bit better. And for him, that was enough. As Keanu walked out of sight, the quiet of the street seemed to shift. The bystanders, who had witnessed the simple act of kindness and bravery, lingered in place for a while longer. The city around them hummed with its usual busyness. There was a subtle undercurrent of change in the air that couldn't be ignored. The woman who had driven Emily away stood for a moment, watching the space where Keanu had disappeared. She took a deep breath, her hand resting gently on Emily's shoulder. You know, sometimes we don't realize how much power we have in moments like this. We all have the ability to choose, to step up or stay silent. And today, Keanu showed us that it's not about being a hero in front of cameras. It's about doing what's right when it's hard, when no one's watching and when we need it most. Emily, still processing everything, nodded slowly, a thoughtful look on her face. It's easy to forget how much kindness can mean. I think it's not just about standing up to people who are wrong, but showing compassion to those who need it, without judgment. The woman smiled at her. Exactly, you have a gift, Emily, and you're not the only one who deserves kindness. This moment, it's a reminder for all of us. We're all capable of more than we think. The two of them stood there for a few more seconds watching the morning unfold. And for the first time in a long while, Emily felt a deep sense of possibility. She realized that her dreams of becoming a musician were no longer a far-off hope. They were something she could chase despite the challenges in her path. Meanwhile, the people who had observed Keanu's actions began to talk amongst themselves, their conversations. A little more thoughtful, a little more inspired. They weren't just thinking about the celebrity they had witnessed acting with grace. They were thinking about how they could do the same in their own lives. The woman who had apologized earlier to Emily spoke quietly to the man next to her. You know, we can't change the world all at once, but we can do little things every day. Like standing up when we see something wrong, or just being kind to others when we see they're struggling. Another bystander, a middle-aged man, who had witnessed the whole interaction, nodded in agreement. Yeah, I've been guilty of staying quiet when I should have spoken up before. But maybe that's what today is about, recognizing that we can all do better. And maybe, just maybe, it starts with one person. One small act. There was a collective pause as the weight of those words hung in the air. People began to disperse, but there was something different in the way they moved. They walked a little taller, a little more aware, as if the world had suddenly expanded with possibilities for kindness. Back at the bus stop, Emily stood at the edge of the sidewalk, her head held high as she adjusted the strap of her bag. The woman beside her glanced at her with a proud smile. You've got this, she said, her voice filled with quiet assurance. Emily grinned, a spark of confidence growing within her. I'm going to do my best. And maybe I'll even call that foundation he told me about. You never know what could happen. As they said their goodbyes, the bus stop began to empty, but the lingering effect of the morning remained. It wasn't just about the heroism of one person. It was about the collective power of standing up for what's right, about showing kindness when it's needed most. And in that moment, the moral of the story was clear to everyone who had witnessed it. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage and compassion ripple outward, inspiring those around us to be better, to be braver, and to be kinder, not just in extraordinary circumstances, but in the everyday moments that make all the difference. Keanu's actions might have been a quiet display of heroism, but the ripple effects were anything but small. The world, it seemed, could use a little more bravery and kindness, and today, people were reminded that they didn't need to wait for someone else to start. They could be the change they wanted to see.